Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening, everyone, and thank you for joining the latest in our series of Bramisol webinars focused on leasing. We will get started in approximately 1 minute. All right, let's get started. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening as we have attendees from all over the U.S. and all over the world today. So thank you, everybody, for joining our webinar. This is our 2017 webinar series on leasing. Today, we will focus on SAP Real Estate Management, update and new features. I am your host and moderator for today's webinar, John Froelich. I am the VP of Strategic Accounts and Marketing at Bramisol. I am joined today by Susanto Bordaloy, who is the head of our leasing practice. And all the way from Israel is Tom Anderson from SAP, the solution owner. Hello and good evening, Tom. So as you all know, leasing includes both movables and real estate. Last month, we focused on movables, and we talked a bit about how we can help solve your challenges in administration and accounting for movables, as well as helping you be compliant with the new ASC 842 and IFRS 16 lease regulations. And we showed how one solution from SAP can do it all for you and is integrated natively with your SAP ECC solution, but also supports all different kinds of ERPs. Today, we will focus on real estate. So let's get started. I'm your moderator, and again, we have Susanto who is joining us, and Tom all the way from Israel. This webinar is being recorded, so you'll be able to download it shortly, probably within the next day or so. You can ask questions throughout the session right here in your question box. We will answer your questions real time. And for those that are a bit more complicated, we will, as usual, follow up with you. You can tweet us at hashtag #SAPLeaseAdmin and let us know how we're doing and let us know any comments or further issues or interests that you might have. You can also view our previous webinars from our homepage. Right down here, if you go to the homepage at www.bramisol.com. You can come down here, scroll down, and you will see the webinars, and you will have access to over 30 different webinars on topics such as S/4HANA, leasing, and of course, revenue recognition. Let me introduce my colleagues who are on the phone here. Let me introduce Susanto. Susanto is the head of our leasing practice. Susanto brings over 20 years of experience in SAP and has a pedigree coming over from Ernst & Young. Welcome, Susanto.
Thank you.
Tom Anderson, who's the owner of the solution for SAP and is the head of the real estate practice, has extensive SAP experience. He's been with SAP over 10 years, has 20 years experience in real estate management, both at SAP and Bearing Point. So welcome, Tom.
Thank you, John.
With that, Susanto, we will get started with you. We'll have a leasing introduction. So take it away, Susanto.
Thank you. Thank you. Good morning, good afternoon, and good evening. I know we have some people joining from overseas. So appreciate you dialing at this late hour. So first and foremost, I want to take a few seconds just to let you know who we are and what is this leasing practice is all about within Bramisol. Just to give a little bit about our practice. So you can see on top there, we are Office of the CFO Solutions. What it means, like anything that relates to the CFO's compliance, or and meeting the standard. That's the focus of our company. That's where we bring in a lot of experts from the process side, from solution expertise side, and then we have the proven tools and methodologies how to get this delivered. So we have approximately 20 years or so SAP and process transformation areas, and we are co-innovators of SAP and Nakisa when it comes to movable assets, as John was mentioning. So, and we have a dedicated lease accounting practice, and I head the practice at Bramisol. And I bring in a lot of 20 years over business and finance transformation experience. My prior company I worked with it, Ernst & Young, and other than that, I worked with IBM and other companies before. So what we do is, you can see in the middle of the slide there, what's your expertise? Like, we are experts in processes, we are experts in solutions, we bring in a lot of knowledge around the industry sectors, and those combined together, on an average, my team includes 15 plus experience on lease accounting practice. So this is real estates as well as movable. So what we do is we partner with Nakisa for the movable assets and with SAP for the non-movable assets like the buildings and lands and buildings. And if you want to do anything on space and facilities management, that's where we work with SAP, Tom Anderson. So we do a lot of demos with the team to help to develop a proof of concept. If you think about it, this is a new tool, new accounting process, which means a new tool, new business process. Now you have to have your ERP to comply with the new regulations. So this has to make a lot of changes to the system and architecture. So SAP, you will hear later today from Tom Anderson about the capabilities that are included within SAP's flexible real estate management solutions, from all the way from lessee solution, multi-gap facilities, as well as disclosures and reporting standards. So can you move to the next slide, please? Thank you. So this slide talks about a high-level view about what is included as far as the functional architecture of the REFX. So this is the short form for Flexible Real Estate Management Solution. So as you understand, it starts with the contract management. So, it depends on property, non-property. You have to identify the partners, vendors, etc. All the data that goes along with it. And you can, that this is a module that comes, in standard solution. But what do we need to do in order to comply with the new regulations, IFRS 16 ASC 842? You have to apply some notes and some add-ons to your existing ERP. Tom will talk a little bit more on that. So I'll touch upon the functionalities at a high level. So it talks about the contract management, how the contracts are managed into a single repository. Like, you can maintain and manage all of your leases into one-stop solution, which is the SAP's REFX solution. You can classify and evaluate. So classify whether it's a financial versus operating lease. Those are kind of some of the capabilities that are built into the solution here. You can also see amortization schedule for payment to the vendors that you can see as part of the classification and valuation. Last but not the least is the finance and costing areas. You can see after the valuation or classification is done, how those new regulations are applicable. Like, it's a link to your fixed asset accounting as well as your asset accounting module of SAP. And onto the right-hand side of the screen, you're saying vendors. So it's all integrated to your vendors it's actually called business partners. So vendors are the business partners. We can comply with their local GAAP. There we have seen a lot of customers who are global in nature. They have their own local GAAP requirements. So these are some of the capabilities built in the solution. IFRS regulations for all multinational companies. You have to comply with the new IFRS regulations there, IFRS 16. Controlling and profit center reporting requirements. So those are some of the functions that are built in the solution, as well as how you can identify the asset that has to be amortized or that has to be put on a lease. So those are part of the solutions. As part of the standard out-of-the-box functionality, you can understand, it has a lot of new standard reporting requirements / the disclosure report requirement, and those are part of the standard solution. And we also identify or understand that SAP comes up with a lot of standard reports, but always we have seen customers need their own kind of nice way to look at some of the disclosure and reporting requirements. That's where we at Bramisol have developed some IPs around it. We have built some reporting requirements so that we can help the customer to expedite the implementation process. Okay. Last but not the least, you can see the biggest part of this is the right of the use assets. So based on your accounting rules and interpretation for a company, the right of use of an asset is different. So that's a new requirement as for the new regulations. So you can identify that what can be treated as an asset, what can be treated as an operating lease, what can be treated as a financial lease. So those are part of the standard solution. And I think Tom will talk a little bit more on each of those areas. John?
Okay, I'm sorry. I thought, Tom, we're all ready for you. Go ahead. We're on the first slide. SAP Contract and Lease Management.
Yeah, so thank you, everybody, for having me on your call. I appreciate the time. I apologize for the background noise, or maybe just got held up and been able to get back to an office in time for this call. So I wanted to just reiterate a few things that Susanto said from this functional architecture slide. And first of all, we developed, our real estate solution, contract management functionality, back in 4.7. So it's been around for almost 18 years now. And as part of that solution, it's been designed to handle real estate processes, right? Things such as service charge settlement or sales-based rents, renewal and notification options, and CPI adjustments. And we generate and post all these things in real time. And what we did is we realized as we went through this development process, we spoke with our partners, our accounting partners, co-innovation customers, that this was more than a technological change. This was also going to require substantial process changes for our customers. So when we did that, we extended the real estate contract and provided the ability to separate the duties to enable SOX compliance, as well as enable the asset accountant to have visibility into the terms and conditions of the contract that were important to them, as well as let the lease administrator do what they're best at, which is managing real estate contracts. So that's why we added the evaluation and classification functionality directly to the existing real estate contract, taking advantage of all the built-in integration that comes natively with real estate solutions. So I want to cover a few slides. First of all, we rolled this solution out back in June of last year, and the intention has always been that we would continue to provide functionality over time. Yes.
Hey, Tom, can you move just a little closer to the mic a little bit, if possible?
You bet. Is it better?
Yes, much better. Thank you.
Okay.
Yes.
So The initial functionality is released through support packs from Enhancement Package 6, ECC 6 onwards. And after that, you are able to extend the solution using OSS notes, right? So we didn't want our customers to be held up by the convoluted and difficult support pack process, with the exception of the initial loading of the solution. And the reason why we had to do a enhancement package or support package was because there's so many technical changes made to the system that we just could not deliver through notes. So through these notes, we have delivered over the last year some items that I want to talk about. These are the new innovations that you may not be familiar with or know that we've delivered. These innovations are your contract classification, subleasing, accruals for evaluations, multi-currency for multi-gap valuation, disclosure reports, and then, of course, some innovations we did for S/4HANA Cloud. And then I'd like to talk about the roadmap after that. So let's dig in and have some fun. So the first thing is the contract classification. So we added a new field in the contract called valuation relevance. And essentially, this valuation relevance determines whether or not, based on that contract, if the valuation terms should be even available to be assigned. But it also provides you the ability to report and classify your contracts, such as your low-value leases or your short-term leases, right? And whether or not it's appropriate to evaluate. So this field is available on all the contract reports within SAP Real Estate, and it drives the ability to generate valuations on individual contracts. So on the inset picture here, you see you can configure this list based on your requirements, whether or not it's relevant for posting in its name, and also you then have the ability to assign what the follow-on processes are available for this, and assign this field by contract type. So while simple, it's the precursor to the much more sophisticated technology that we'll be delivering later that I'll talk about. Next slide, please. So on subleasing was the next major piece that we rolled out. And as you know, with real estate, it's important to be able to manage your space more efficiently and to get rid of space you don't need, because real estate is typically the second largest expense a company has after salaries. So many companies sublease space, and we needed to find a way to link together essentially the sublease with the primary lease, and to be able to relieve the corresponding right of use asset and liability based on the sublease amount. So we developed some new parameters, valuation parameters, which allow us to determine how we control the right of use posting and the corresponding liability. So if you see them, this little screen inset here, there's a line that's highlighted called statistical one-time asset retirement. And this is essentially the sublease amount that you'll receive, and is reducing this lease amount. So what this does is while it doesn't generate any kind of payment, it reduces the right of use asset by the sublease amount. And of course, all the additional entries. So you'll see actually on the asset master, the initial valuation and it being reduced by this sublease. We also provide the ability to adjust or assign a sublease to the master lease, so it'll support your reporting, and as well, so I can see, oh, here's my primary lease, and the ability to say, here's the corresponding subleases for this agreement. You see below the example of the statistical one-time asset retirement and how it has a valuation property of subletting, and how we consider it. It's 100% considered or fully considered, and it reduces the corresponding liability. This functionality is delivered again by note, so after you've delivered the initial support package, you can apply this at your convenience. Next slide. As we work with our co-innovation customers, something that we talked a lot about was the ability to generate non-standard accruals for payments. So if you think about the scenario that I have a rent payment that's made annually, for example, in that I need to be able to, while I may evaluate that on a monthly basis, I need to be able to also generate my accruals for my payments. So what we have done is we've extended our standard accrual deferral functionality that's been in real estate for many years to be able to say, hey, this is based on each accrual type. Here are the GAAP versions that this is applicable for. And the solution will then generate the accruals and deferrals for you when you run the accrual programs. It's important to know that this will do it for all your GAAP versions, not just one or the leading GAAP. So if you have a contract that's been set up for IFRS and for US GAAP and for a local GAAP, that the solution will generate these accrual deferral entries and post them into each ledger for you simultaneously and in real time. So there's some notes here, and I would encourage you for the details around this one to go specifically to the note that's listed, and it walks you through the functionality and the process that's available to you. Okay, so next slide. Before I move on to multi-currency, multi-GAAP, are there any questions, John, that have come through?
No, so far so good, Tom. Keep going.
All right. So let's talk about multi-currency. Again, as we worked with this through our innovation customers, these are very sophisticated, larger companies, and they said, well, we have contracts that are in different currencies than our company code currency and that are different than our group currencies. And we need to be able to calculate the valuation for our company code and group currencies. So in this case, we developed our multi-cap valuation, and what it allows us to do is to take the contract currency that may be different from the group company code currency, and then calculate all of the balance sheet valuations from that contract currency. So it allows us to, as you see in the picture here below, that this is a contract that is in euros, but we're able to see that the asset is posted in US dollars, and then the local currency is seen in euros, right? So I'm able to see both multi-currencies on the same posting, parallel, side by side, so I can understand the currency impact on these valuation entries. So it's important to note too here that all these entries are done through the contract currency, and that's the one that will drive all the valuation entries. Again, I've listed the note above here for you to go and to get more details related to this enhancement, if this is an issue for you. Of course, these notes are also included in future support packs, but there's great documentation that our developers have included. Next slide.
Tom, there's before we move on, actually, there's a question here about CAM allocation, C-A-M allocation. Is that included?
Common area maintenance allocations. So
Yeah,
for
I
us,
believe so.
common area maintenance allocation is we handle the advance payments for common area maintenance that are typically defined on the contract, right? But these common area maintenance expenses should not be included in the valuation. So there's the ability to, by condition, say whether or not it participates in the valuation. And if it doesn't, like CAM, it just is never included in the cash flows. So yes, the solution does handle that, as well as service charges and many other types of maybe electricity expenses, which are typical on a contract, but they're typically on a contract and they should not be included in the valuation. So we have a way of excluding those. Absolutely.
Okay. And that's a lot of the focus in some cases, I believe, of the new ASC 842 and IFRS, pulling some of that out. So that's a great feature, right?
Yeah, it's very important to be able to exclude these kind of entries because a real estate contract is so complicated that it has many different payment types. And you have to be able to say, oh, this should be included and this should be excluded. Or there may be a triple net lease in which a portion of a lease payment should be included. On one of the slides I had back with the subleasing, at the very bottom you see an example of the detail related to a payment condition. And you see here where it says valuation property, that may be consideration, right? Full consideration or not considered. And there's also a percent value there or an absolute value number. So I can say, oh, 80% of the payment should be included or $9,000 of a $10,000 payment. So you can define that as the asset count and how much actually does participate in the valuation process.
Okay. And that can be done, Tom, I believe, either automatically through the CAM allocations that's inherent in the tool, or you can override it through manual, correct?
Right. So you define through configuration what conditions really participate, right? I mean, a CAM prepayment will never participate, or a service charge would never participate. So you just configure it and say, not considered. But if I have a condition that may participate or may have a percentage of it participate, then I can go into that specific payment type and say, oh, here's the amount I want to use, or even exclude it.
Great. Thank you. All right.
All right.
Let's keep going.
So going on to disclosure reports, it was our strategy at SAP Real Estate that we would develop our basic functionality related to the solution. We wanted to have a very, very strong accounting back end and then bring the reports together with that. So we pushed the development of our reports towards the tail end of our development cycle because we wanted to make sure that our model was strong and stable. So we've been rolling out reports, and we will continue to roll out reports, as I'll show you in the roadmap. The first one is around leased assets for contracts. So the requirement's going to be, well, hey, what right-of-use assets are assigned to each contract, right? So I can easily do analysis and report. Obviously, you can go to the contract and look at it and see it that way, but it's also nice to be able to see en masse, right? Like here's a bunch of contracts with their contract types, their contract start date, end dates, currency, etc., and see the corresponding right-of-use asset. So you can obviously filter by acquisition date or capitalization date, object type, asset class, valuation rule to understand your right-of-use assets. The next report we've had out for a while, but it's important to understand it, is the valuation cash flow report. And this report has two versions. One is to be able to look at a process and understand if it's been completed or not, if it's current in its status, or if it needs to be updated. So obviously green, good, red, bad. So this allows you to look quickly at contracts or filter by the status and say, oh, here's the contracts that have been changed by the lease administrator, and the asset accountant can then easily identify them and perform the valuation for them. Because one of the hallmarks of our solution is that the terms and conditions of the agreement are always in sync with the valuation postings. If they come out of sync, they're identified as being as the status needs to be updated, and they're easily identified. But the second part of this whole report is also being able to understand the values, the valuation cash flow values. And that's what you see below. So we see here just one contract. You can run this wide open or by contract type, etc. And be able to see quickly the contract value, the present value, the opening balance right are your other financial postings, such as expense, interest expense, etc. As it moves through its processing life cycle, these values are updated to the bolded and underlined, and that allows you to hyperlink back to the original financial postings within asset accounting or within the general ledger. We released this one just recently, the Payable Reclassification Report, which looks at the payable amount and classifies them in your buckets from 1 year, up to 1 year, 1 year to 5 years, and after 5 years. So, able to look at an existing lease, right, and put it into the right buckets for you. Obviously, a very important process into requirements of the lease accounting standards. We're also going to use this same report, just so you know, as the basis of the reclassification from long-term to short-term liability. So as it looks to this, it'll say, oh, okay, here's my amount up to 1 year. Remove that amount from the long-term liability and put that into the short-term liability. And we'll use the standard FI process to make that movement for you. So that report will be then 1 for reporting, and 2 is also the basis of the future reclassification postings. That will be standard FI process. All right. And the next innovation that we've just wrapped up was contract on lease management for S/4HANA Cloud. So within S/4HANA Cloud, we released the same contract management functionality, or pretty close to the same contract management functionality, that's found within your on-premise version of SAP, but obviously it's available as a cloud solution and a subscription price. So this allows you to manage these agreements using the same processing as we see with the on-premise version. All right. Next slide. For plant
Tom, real quick. Tom, couple of quick questions before we get to the future. One of them has to do with going back. We're going to jump back to multi-currency for a moment. The question is, would we see the asset accounting document and depreciation documents also in multi-currency?
Yes, you will.
Okay.
So this screenshot here actually is showing the asset posting. So you see the FXA. There's the asset number there, and I see there's the asset value in US dollars and the asset value in euros. In this example.
Okay. Yep. The next one is, where is the exchange rate derived?
So it's derived from the standard finance exchange rate tables. So real estate relies on standard finance functionality, and it uses the same parameters that's used by the rest of the organization. So there's no unique process to maintain exchange rates for real estate.
Okay. The next question, we'll jump down to S/4HANA Cloud. Is REFX, when you subscribe, if you will, for S/4HANA Cloud, does REFX come as part of that, or is it something separate? How does that work?
Yeah, so it's a separate license. So once again, it sits within the same stack as the solution, but there's an additional license fee for it, just like there's additional license fee for a real estate on-premise. It's just a subscription price by user.
All right. Okay. Thank you, Tom. All right, we'll move to the roadmap now.
All right. So looking at the roadmap, where we're going with this. So most of these items, I should back up here. The lawyers will make me say that one cannot make purchase or buy decisions based on any forward-looking statement. And a roadmap is naturally a forward-looking statement, and we do our best to deliver what we say we're going to deliver when we deliver it, but there's no guarantees. Nor was there a guarantee that it'll look like what I'm talking about. Now that the lawyers are off my back, I can move on. So some of the things that we want to do that we will be delivering fourth quarter and first quarter this year, first quarter next year. So one will be an asset deactivation, right? So there will be times when you retire a property property, and we may be able to remove the values as we modify the lease and exercise or execute a termination of the lease. It brings the right of use asset down to 0. But we still need to be able to have to deactivate the asset within asset accounting. So we'll have a run that will allow you to deactivate a single asset or multiple assets at the same time. Okay. I talked a little bit about the posting of long and short-term classifications, right? So we have the requirement that we need to be able to move the current portion of our long-term liability. And so while we've developed the report and we know that the posting logic, it's now incorporating that functionality into the standard FI reclassification program. So that's under development as well. The big one out there is the lease questionnaire and classification. So obviously for US GAAP and for IFRS as well, there's a process that you go through to determine whether or not the evaluation should even occur. If it does, what type of lease is it under US GAAP? So you have your questionnaire that you run through, as you know, with how much of the life of the asset are you using, what value lease, are you going to assume a certain percentage of the market value of the asset, et cetera. You go through your questionnaire to determine whether or not it's a finance lease or capital lease. So what we intend to deliver is a questionnaire that goes in the valuation tab. You click a button and it brings up a configurable list of questions. So you as the customer can put in there what questions you want to ask. We will provide obviously the calculations for present value numbers, the percent of life utilized, which are obviously standards that you have to have. But there may be other questions that you would want to ask yes or no to or whatever to and store your answers. So this questionnaire will be configurable and will be stored for each time frame. So as you make a modification to the lease, you would then complete the questionnaire again. You would store the values related to those questions and then make a proposal on whether it's a finance lease, operating lease, or whether it should be included in the IFRS valuation. Mm-hmm. So that is a big piece of work that's expected to come out fourth quarter this year. Obviously, there's still more disclosure reports to be delivered, and we're building these, and they're within our co-innovation customers now, and we'll continue to roll those out through OSS nodes. And then let's go to the next slide, which is the valuation Fiori app. So with an S4, whether it's S4 on a cloud or S4 on premise, we're delivering new ways to interface and interact with real estate. We released for Cloud for Real Estate last year, or earlier this year, a Fiori app for the contract, simplifying the contract maintenance. And the same Fiori app will be available in S4 in the very near future. Included will also deliver a Fiori app for valuations. We'll walk you through the valuation process and help you complete all the required fields and questionnaires. So really trying to simplify the whole process and give you a new look and feel for the valuation of your postings. And then last slide is the lease liability report, which is also their co-innovation customers now. And here's an example below showing the lease liability amount based on each time frame and also by currency. So supporting multi-currency by lease valuation rule, whether it's local GAAP, IFRS, or US GAAP, all within their time frames. So any last questions before I turn it back over?
There aren't any other questions. I do have a question. Can you talk for a moment, because we have found on both the movables leases as well as the revenue accounting, that the disclosure reports are a big deal, if you will. You know, at the end of the day, there's, you know, part of it has to do with all of the reporting. Can you talk for a moment, Tom, about how you're approaching this idea or the concept of the disclosure reporting and its applicability, or in how it's in line with 840, you know, the whole issues of 842 and IFRS 16, et cetera?
Yeah, sure. So as part of our solution, right, we're generating all the valuation cash flows. So we have the basis of the calculations and we know the numbers. What's important now is to actually deliver the reports themselves. And the approach we're taking is to actually we develop a report based on what we think it should look like. And then we've been going back to our co-innovation customers who've been so good to us, partners, accounting partners, and implementation partners like yourself, and are saying, oh, this needs to be here, and this needs to look like this, and you need to do this differently. And it goes back, and we actually do a cycle of, okay, let's change it. We send it back to them, and they give us feedback, and we do it again. So these reports have been very, very active, probably the most active I've seen in my time at SAP with development and co-innovating with our customers. It's been a fantastic process.
Thank you. Before we move to implementation and talk about the laser methodology through Sasanto, anything you'd like the audience to know you know, just about REFX in general? Well, of course, I'm a little biased, right? But I think we have a fantastic solution that's tightly integrated with your financial system and gives you a form of integration that you're not going to get with any other solution besides what SAP provides, right? Whether that's Leasing Administration by Nikisa or SAP Real Estate, both of them are tightly integrated and come out of the box that way. So I think that we've spent a lot of time working on that integration. We've developed new ways of communicating and working with asset accounting that I think that those who try to look at a point solution are going to experience some real difficulties trying to integrate those with SAP Finance. So I would think about that seriously, and hope that if you have questions, please don't hesitate to reach out to me, and be glad to help walk you through it. Perfect. Thank you, Tom. All right. All right. Thanks, John. Just go on mute here. All right, Sasanto. Well, wait a minute. We might have one more question. You're a popular guy today, Tom. Oh, it's a trick question, Tom. So any comments from Tom on using REFX for movable assets? Mm-hmm. Well, I was almost surprised I didn't have this question. So to me, it's all about process, right? The accounting between equipment leases and real estate leases is the same. The standard doesn't care whether it's a building or a piece of equipment. But what matters is the process that's required to support that accounting. Real estate is designed specifically to handle real estate processes such as CPI adjustments, common area maintenance, sales-based rent expenses, many different condition types on the same contract. While the Nikisa solution is designed specifically to handle equipment leasing processes, salvage and removal, mass terminations, location management, mass equipment handling, right? Things that are found specifically around equipment leasing. So it isn't about the accounting, it's about what your process requirements are. And the correct solution should be utilized to support your requirements. So the answer is, I don't have a problem doing equipment leasing within real estate. It's had that functionality from the very first day we released REFX. I do have a problem using real estate functionality to support complex equipment leasing processes. Just like I have a problem using Nikisa to support real estate specific processes. The customer will find they have issues if they try to cross over, if they have these types of processes. I hope that no, it does, Tom. That's a great answer. And in our last webinar and in sessions that you know that we've done several times in front of audiences, it always comes up. And I think in summary, it comes down to really, as you said, it's about the process and the management, both the administration, accounting, and the compliance. And you want to use the tool that's appropriately, as our friend Mike Ramsey always says, purpose-built to manage and help you optimize the process. And when it comes to real estate, that tool is the SAP REFX tool. When it comes to movables, the tool is the SAP Lease Administration by Nikisa tool. So, you know, the answer is use the tool that's intended and purpose-built for that business process.
Exactly right.
Great answer. All right, without further ado, let me move on to Susanto.
Right. Thank you.
Right, Susanto.
Thank you. Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Thank you. Thank you, John, and thank you, Tom. Really, that's a great explanation, walking through the capabilities and features. I know a lot of, you know, some certain things are in flux. You already saw in lab preview, so the disclosures and all, which is in lab preview. But I think, you know, having a preview of what's available, what's coming in, I think that's definitely helpful for a lot of our clients or a lot of our attendees today. So now, if you think of, before I jump in, you know, the lease laser, let me brief you why, you know, why is it required? Why do I need to first start with a new process? Why do I have a dedicated lease accounting practice? Why do I need to have a methods and process around it, right? Like any other project, this is a unique, it has its own unique requirement. So you can think about it. So Bramisol, that's the reason, coming from a finance transformation background, we have introduced LASER. What it means, Lease Administration Solution Engagement Roadmap. So what it typically, it is a very agile and very agile project. You know, and a lot of things are overlapping here. Just so you know, we started the assessment of the project, where you typically look at your, you know, the data abstract. We typically look at identification of the leases and lease abstract, you know, transforming your paper-based contract into a system, loading digital contracts, and you know, cleaning and data derivation, and finally loading into the system. That's one part. The second piece is accounting relevance and treatment. So we need to understand, we will work with your audit partners and teams like that, accounting teams, to identify, okay, what is the relevance and accounting treatments of those leases, right? And then, you know, the third step is, then we have to configure for the new compliance standard, the FASB solution, ASC 842 and IFRS 16 regulations. And then finally, last but not least, we load the data into the system. So there are a lot of moving parts here. You can see lease assessment is a big piece itself. And then once we finalize the lease, the portfolio of the lease you have, then we start the project definition. And then we go to the system, defining the system landscape. For example, if you have a asset accounting, if you have, you know, we have seen in certain clients, they have their own small little tool where they load currently their own real estate leases in that tool. So in a long-term perspective, do you want to do that from a maintenance and facilities management perspective? If the answer is no, then probably you need to migrate all the data and transition it into this real estate management solution. So that's the reason we have a dedicated process here. So, you know, the step, we start with the assessment and project preparation, which is the first step. Then we go to blueprint and solution demo. I'll tell you why this is very important. So as I said earlier on, the accounting is new. Accounting makes a lot of changes to the business process, which in turn you have to comply with it. So you have to change your system, the way it behaves, the way you configure, the way you design it, right? Everything has to be changed, starting from asset accounting, fixed asset, tracking, and some of it also goes back to your plant maintenance module and procure to pay areas. So this tool, what we do in this phase is we take some of the quick wins from the client who you work with you to identify what makes sense for you to develop it and demo it. The reason for demo is very important because we play it back. We understand the requirements. We then play it back to your IT and accounting and and the business team so that they are understanding what the future state system will look like, as well as they can also learning as we are making progress on the project. So that's the reason it is very important that we do the blueprint and solution demo side by side. It's like an iterative cycles, typically 2 to 4 week cycle. It happens, and we have multiple sprint cycle defined there within the blueprint and solution demo. Then you go to a realization. And this is a phase where you'll see a lot of things around, okay, we now freeze the requirement. Now we are building in cycles of 2 to 4 weeks. Those multiple sprints happens in that sprint iteration. It's kind of iterative process. That's where we design, we document, we design, and play it back. Those are the 3 typical things happens during this phase of the project. So there are always delta. The delta means where we need more deeper analysis before we say, there will be, the business is not even sometimes we clear about, okay, what's their expectations in the future state, because accounting is still working on that. So all those will be part of the delta. And once they are at a firm decision, we realize and document, and then again, the sprint iterative cycles happen. Then you go to the final preparation, where we prepare for the final prep, end user training, UAT, and cutover activities are defined. What are the background jobs that will be executed? Who will be there? So you understand there are a lot of job descriptions are also changing because this is a new tool, new accounting policy, and new steps are included. New transaction codes are included. So there are some SOD segregation of duties are changing here. So we have to make sure those are also part of the plan as part of final prep activities. Then go live and hypercare. We do not want to leave behind with a new solution. Unless the client always asks for a really like a training module, we use the concept of train the trainer, where we start with super users and train them, and so that they become the trainer for your extended user base later on. So we typically start from 2 to 4 weeks cycle there. So handover and support, and we have until your first fiscal year closing, we typically make sure we have a handhold there before we depart the project team there. The other part you can see from start of the phase that goes on is a project administration, because as I said, this is a very different kind of project. So you have to make sure the project administration, how you're tracking, how you're monitoring, how they're monitoring the tracker, the RAID log, which is the risk, issues, and all those things are accounted during those tracking from early phase of the project until go live. And we have also to make sure that in certain clients, they always say that look, we have to start with US compliance first, then we go to IFRS later on. So those are part of the roadmap discussions. So you have to make sure if certain companies, because of their magnitude of the impact, because of the number of leases they have, because of complexity, they may want to stage it in different phases. So those are part of the roadmap discussion. And another thing we have not included here, but everyone understands that I touch on it, is the data migration and transition that happens from day 1 on the project all the way to day final go live, and then until you switch it to the new regulations or new GAAP requirement. So it typically you're talking about based on complexity of the project, it starts with 6 months all the way to 12 plus months on a project of this magnitude. And we have some accelerators and tools that will help to expedite the implementation roadmap or implementation process here. Okay, over to John.
Well, thank you, Susanto. That's excellent. I know that you've worked hard both with SAP, Nikisa, and amongst our team on this process and methodology, so great job here. Folks, before we wrap up real quick, I have a couple of quick polls for you, answer some questions that will help with follow-up questions. So the first one is, we'll launch that, and it is, what kind of a real estate solution are you currently using? So if you folks would just take a quick moment to answer those questions, we'd appreciate it. In the interim, there's a question on here, Tom. First question is there any solution in REFX for postings after the expiry of the REFX contract for lease-in? One of the challenges today is after the closure of REFX contract, financial postings are not allowed in. In real-life business scenarios, the actual closure of contracts takes time. Is SAP coming up with an innovative functionality to manage this in the near future?
Well, we do allow postings from what the possession date allows you to extend the contract beyond the contract end. That's probably what you're referring to. So on the contract master record itself, the term tab, if you activate possession date, that's there, and that allows you to generate postings after the termination date of the agreement. Yeah.
Thank you.
So I recommend you look.
All right. No, that's great. So the answer, so everybody knows, is 50% of the folks on here are using an SAP solution. 8% have some other non-SAP solution, and 42% have no solution. So thank you for that. We'll launch one other quick poll while we're waiting for a couple of more questions. So where are you on your leasing project? Haven't started the assessment phase, data migration, you're in implementation, or you're finished? And thanks everybody for jumping in real quick. Tom, I know while we're waiting for the poll to finish up, we do know that Nikisa is a relatively new solution, but you and I have spoken many times. SAP real estate management, particularly the aspects of helping manage and administer real estate's been around for a while. Is that correct?
Yeah, we actually released it back in 4.7. So truly, it's almost going on 18 years since we initially released the first version. Yeah.
So it's essentially a tried and true solution with constant updates.
It's definitely tried and true solution used by thousands of customers globally.
And from the S/4HANA perspective, I know you guys have spent a lot of time really robustly testing and ensuring how well it integrates and works, correct?
So it's actually part of S/4HANA's native component of it. So it's available in S/4HANA. It's part of the finance stack. So full integration. It's just one more release for customers to adopt on their S/4HANA journey.
All right. Well, Tom, thank you very much. I know it's getting late. Ladies and gentlemen, we're 1 minute to the top of the hour, so I thank all of you very much. For those of you who responded, and thank you, 59% haven't started their project, 29% are in assessment, and the remainder are either in data migration implementation, but nobody has finished their project. So great timing for all of you who have joined. I encourage you to reach out to Tom, to Susanto, or myself. Here are their contact information. As I said earlier, we will be posting this to our website and sharing it with Tom, so he'll have it available for SAP. Just remember that SAP is the leader in ASC 842 and IFRS 16 leasing solutions. Whether it is for movables or real estate, we have a purpose-built solution that can help you both administer, account for, and comply with the new standards. And Bramisol is the leader in working with SAP, both on the co-innovation front as well as implementation. So I thank everybody for joining us. Have a great day. Tom, thank you so much for joining us all the way from Israel, and safe trip home, and we look forward to seeing everybody soon. Have a terrific day, everyone.
Great, thank you.
Thank you.